Marvel's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Chapter 11. Is it going to be hellish difficulty? Bid complained. Shouldn't a normal Spider-Man start by catching bicycle thieves on the street, helping an old lady cross the road and getting a pancake reward, and being a good neighbor? How could he be the boss as soon as he came up? The four in front of me, any one of them is the boss of a certain stage in the game. Even if you come out alone, you have to fight for a long time. Let alone four of them together. However, the good news is that I have a lot of help here. There are 6 Spider-Mons in total. Shadow Spider-Man counts as 1. The middle-aged Peter version of Spider-Man counts as 1. Spider-Pigman counts as 1. Gwen Spider-Man counts as 1. Penny, the Mecha Spider-Man, is naturally one of them. Bid and Little Black Spider barely counted half of it each. 6v4. The advantage is mine. Bid suddenly became confident. At this time. Idiot, why are you so dazed during the battle? Gwen grabbed Bid's hand and threw him away. A mechanical octopus hand pierced the position where Bid was standing just now, directly inserted into the stone slab below, breaking the stone into pieces. Thanks to the training in the abandoned warehouse not long ago, Bid became familiar with the body at this time. He quickly adjusted his body shape in the air, and then stretched out his hand to fly back with spider silk. However, after reaching out his hand, he realized that his spider silk launcher had just been sealed by the Shadow Spider-Man, and it started fighting again as soon as he came back. It was still sealed, so how could he spit out the silk? Peter, you tricked me. Bid was so filled with grief and anger that he missed the chance to fly back and hit Aunt May on the roof of his neighbor's house. But at this time, no one paid attention to him. As Ms. Octopus took the lead, chaos immediately broke out below. After Gwen threw Bid out, she turned around and attacked Ms. Octopus. Spider-Pigman on the side found the tombstone with a confused look on his face. This guy looks smelly and hard. I really don't want to fight him. The Scorpion King was going to bypass the 2 people and rush into the house to kill the little black spider. At this time, middle-aged Peter also rushed up. Hey, man, you are a scorpion and I am a spider. We are distant relatives. I don't think we need to fight. Oh, you are so enthusiastic. The middle-aged Peter dodged the Scorpion King's scorpion tail needle and kicked him. Kicked him on the side. Hey, this guy is so hard. Let me do it. Penny didn't know when she had completed the integration with her mecha partner, and she rushed out of the house driving the spider mecha. The spider mecha's left hand turned into a sharp disc, spinning rapidly. The disc cut into the Scorpion King's body, bursting out a series of sparks. The Scorpion King roared in pain, and the steel scorpion tail needle struck the spider mecha hard, knocking it away. Don't you feel bad about using such violent means to deal with a little girl? Shadow Spider-Man jumped out of the room, raised his hand and tied up the Scorpion King's legs with a thread of spider silk, and then shot another thread of spider thread on his head, and threw him out with force with both hands. Why are you out too? Penny jumped back in the spider mecha. Where's Miles? Miles. The enemies are outside the house, so no one should bother him, right? Shadow Spider-Man and Penny surrounded the Scorpion King on the left and right, communicating at the same time. But I gave him the gadget before I came out, Penny said. Shadow Spider-Man. Why didn't you tell me about such an important thing earlier? I thought you'd stay inside and be like a dependable uncle. Uncle. Shadow Spider-Man cast a confused expression. What else? Penny actually had time to spread her hands, but why don't you go back to the house to help Miles? There was a crisp sound of glass breaking. Accompanied by a suppressed mechanical roar, a purple figure shot into the room, heading straight for the bewildered little black spider standing in the room. Although the little black spider has little experience in facing enemies, it can still do simple dodge. With the help of his spider sense, almost at the same time, he did a backflip and dodged the blow. Boom. But the sofa behind him isn't that good at it. Being torn apart by the prowler, the sofa was immediately torn into several pieces, and the lint inside flew all over the room. Oh. My God, why did you just break into other people's homes? And destroy other people's things? Aunt May walked over angrily with a baseball bat and hit the prowler. Although the prowler was beaten with a stick, Aunt May was not very strong and he was protected by armor, so he did not move at all. But not hurting doesn't mean you don't care. He glanced sideways at Aunt May, raised his hand, and was ready to teach this ignorant old woman a lesson. Hey! Why is there a scumbag here who attacks children and the elderly? Behind him, the shadow Spider-Man arrived before he could be heard. Prowler's eyes narrowed. He knew that if he was held back by any Spider-Man, his action to kill the little spider in front of him might be hindered. In order to avoid a misfortune in his life, the Prowler decisively gave up teaching Aunt May a lesson, and grabbed the little black spider with his sharp claws again. However, after Aunt May sacrificed her life to save her, little black spider had already reacted. He subconsciously turned on his invisibility and ran out of the broken window. Although he is small, it does not mean that he is stupid. He knew that his uncle, the Prowler, was targeting him, and as long as he stayed in the house, Aunt May would not be safe. So he decisively chose to leave. At least lure people out. Buzz. There was a hint of sharp mechanical roar in the dullness, like gangrene on the bones. Even if he didn't look back, little black spider knew that his uncle was behind him at this moment. He didn't dare to stop at all, or even ask for help from others. Maybe he subconsciously doesn't want his uncle to be an enemy of Spider-Man. Boy, give me that thing quickly, quickly. The Prowler's voice came from behind. However, the little black spider didn't dare to respond at all, and just kept its head buried in running wildly. However, he still made a fatal mistake. His simple movement trajectory, in the eyes of a seasoned hunter like Prowler, is like a little beast that has no choice but to choose its own path. So catchy. The Prowler's feet suddenly exerted force, and his speed suddenly increased several times. In an instant, he appeared behind the little black spider, and then punched it to the ground. The little black spider fell heavily to the ground and rolled a few times. When he wanted to stand up, his body was already held down by the Prowler who followed him closely. The cold steel claws grabbed the little black spider's neck tightly, directly cutting off the oxygen supply to the lungs. The little black spider started to have difficulty breathing. He looked at the cold mask in front of him and thought of the face of the person close to him under the mask. He reluctantly raised his hand and lifted up his mask. Uncle Aaron. The Prowler's claws stopped in midair. Miles. Prowler looked at his nephew in disbelief. My nephew is also Spider-Man. Moreover, he is the one whose boss gave the order to kill him. What are you waiting for? Kill him quickly. At this time, the voice of Boss Jin Bin came from the Prowler's earphones. There was obvious hesitation on Aaron's face. This is his favorite nephew. He has no children of his own, not even a girlfriend. So he always regarded Miles as his biological son. He even chose to become the Prowler, partly because he wanted to be a superhero in the eyes of children. Unfortunately, forced by life, he only became a super criminal and failed to follow his original path. In an instant, thousands of thoughts flashed through Aaron's mind. Finally, he reached out and pulled up his simple polyester mask for little black spider. Protect yourself. Bang. Bang. The two voices sounded almost at the same time. Before he could even finish his words, the Prowler was kicked out by someone. Bit appeared next to the little black spider. Without any explanation, he hugged him and rolled on the ground. The kick just now was naturally caused by him. This isn't about attacking the Prowler, though. In fact, when he saw little black spider taking off his mask and recognizing Prowler from a distance, he knew that little black spider was definitely fine. But he saw a huge man as strong as a wall appearing below. Kingpin. Kingpin took out a high-tech pistol in his hand and pointed it at Prowler and little black spider. Peter didn't know who Kingpin wanted to kill. But he suddenly thought of a wonderful curse. It is said that every Spider-Man begins with the loss of his uncle. Therefore, almost subconsciously, when he saw Kingpin raising his gun, he ejected towards this side with the greatest explosive force, and then kicked the Prowler away with a flying kick in the air. At the same time, just to be on the safe side, he also used the magic skill Lazy Donkey Roll with little black spider. Although it doesn't look very good, I have to say that the effect is outstanding. The second, bang, was the sound of Kingpin's pistol. Obviously, he missed. Then, a somewhat annoyed Kingpin raised his gun again. At this moment, Shadow Spider-Man, who was a few steps late because he wanted to get rid of Ms. Octopus, finally arrived. He quickly stepped forward and interrupted Jin Bin's movements. Not to be outdone, Kingpin started fighting with Shadow Spider-Man. Kingpin's fighting style is quite ferocious, and he is worthy of being a man whose body is 90% muscle. His punch could actually smash the cement block on the roadside. And his fighting skills are very high. Shadow Spider-Man is a master of fighting in his own right, but he still feels vaguely suppressed in front of Kingpin. Of course, maybe this is also related to the fact that he has never fought with a flexible fat man like Kingpin and has not yet adapted to it. Uncle. The little black spider broke away from Bid's arms and ran in the direction of the Prowler. But the Prowler was on his feet. He stretched out his hand, as if he wanted to touch the little black spider's head, but he had some scruples and didn't do it. Then he looked at Bide without saying a word, just leaving a complicated look in his eyes, then turned and left. Hey! Bid stopped him. The Prowler paused slightly, but did not turn around. Bid pointed to the place where Shadow Spider-Man and Kingpin fought, and said loudly, "If you go back like this, you will definitely be killed by Kingpin. You know what Kingpin is like." The Prowler's body stopped completely. He knew that Bede was right. "But I have no choice," Prowler said. "If I leave without authorization, it will affect others." The other people he spoke of were his brother and sister-in-law, the father and mother of Little Black Spider. And Miles the Little Black Spider. "No, you have a choice," Bid said. The Prowler turned sharply. However, he wore a mask on his face, making it impossible to discern his specific thoughts. Bide clenched his fist and said decisively, "Join us and kill Kingpin. He will never threaten you again." The Prowler was clearly moved. Bid was secretly happy in his heart and continued to use his mouth escape method to persuade. "We now have a total of 7 Spider-Man from different universes. This is the best time to kill Kingpin. If you miss this opportunity, you will really be unable to escape for the rest of your life. Oh. And Miles and your brother will also be under the shadow of Jin Bin for the rest of their lives." The Prowler continued to be silent, obviously thinking about something. Bide took a look and saw that the heat seemed to be a little low. He thought about it again and decided to add more fuel to the fire. As someone close to Kingpin, you should have seen how much impact his collider had on the entire Brooklyn. And now he wants to open it again once, twice, or even countless times. Sooner or later, Brooklyn will be destroyed by the collider. Is this what you want to see? Did you put on this suit just to become this kind of person? After Bide finished speaking, he felt a little uneasy. He had previously seen information about the Prowler, a classic Spider-Man villain. He was the youngest of 9 brothers and sisters. His father left them when he was an infant. So they lived with their alcoholic mother since childhood. Under such conditions, it is obviously impossible for him to go to school. However, despite this lack of formal schooling, he still had many achievements in design and invention. Just because of various reasons such as his identity and education, no one was willing to listen to his story. He also failed to find an opportunity to display his talents. He could only find a job as a window cleaner to make ends meet. Later, by chance, he was involved in a battle between superheroes and supercriminals, and saw the ability of the guy who was an ordinary person but became a super criminal with the help of high-tech clothing. So he quit his job as a window cleaner and designed a diversified combat suit for himself, including wrist and ankle bracelets filled with special liquids, sharp steel claws, and special boots for climbing. Later, he created his new identity, the Prowler. Of course, this is the backstory of the super criminal. The Prowler, just like Dr. Octopus in this world became Ms. Octopus, Aaron Davis in this world is obviously significantly different from the backstory version of the Prowler. But different worlds may have similar characters. Just like Spider-Man, they always hit it off. So Bide decided to take a gamble. Under Bid's nervous gaze, Prowler nodded. "What you said makes sense, I'll join." Hearing this, Bide showed a smile. He made the right bet. This battle came and went suddenly. After the alarm bells rang one after another in the distant streets, Kingpin and his generals escaped one after another. Spider-Man has no intention of saving them. Because they don't want to deal with the police unless necessary. Most police officers have a bad opinion of Spider-Man as a vigilante, as does most of the world. Everyone then gathered at Aunt May's house again and then quickly left. Aunt May's house was the starting point of the battle, and although this sudden battle was short-lived, it still affected the entire street. Therefore, Aunt May is considered the main victim and witness and must stay for police questioning. Although they were very sorry, in order to avoid meeting the police, Bide and others had no choice but to leave their dilapidated home and Aunt May and leave here temporarily. After much thought, they decided to go to the abandoned warehouse they often visited recently for a gathering. For the sake of concealment, everyone left separately. Bid put on his own clothes outside the spider suit and hid in the crowd. Although he has an oriental face, there are quite a few orientals in Eagle Country, so they are not too eye-catching. Soon, everyone gathered in the abandoned warehouse again. However, besides the Spider-Men, there was one more person who came. Prowler. Seeing the Prowler appearing here, Gwen and others subconsciously assumed fighting postures. They thought Kingpin was still unwilling to give up and was going to fight them again. The little black spider jumped out quickly. He came here with his uncle, and Prowler talked to him a lot on the way. The most important thing is that Prowler was persuaded by Bid and decided to change his past. Hey, everyone listen to me. This is my uncle, and he doesn't work for Kingpin anymore. Everyone, calm down, said Bide, who walked on two legs and arrived a little later than them. When he saw this, he quickly stood up to stop them. He walked between the two groups and said, Miles's uncle decided to turn over the dark side and help us deal with Kingpin together, so I think we don't need to be hostile to him. Wow, how did you do that? Middle-aged Peter asked in surprise. On the way here, he was still thinking about how to help Miles resolve the matter between him and his uncle. Unexpectedly, he was silenced by Bid. Resolved without a fuss. And according to observations, the Prowler's combat effectiveness is extraordinary. This move not only weakened the enemy's lineup, but also strengthened our own strength. With this coming and going, the improvement is not just a little bit. Naturally, Bid would not tell them that he made the bet based on the character of a Prowler from another world. He just roughly said what he said to Aaron Davis. When they heard that he chose to stand with them to protect his family, the Spider-Monts all breathed a sigh of relief. If it is for other reasons, it may be false. But since they are family members, their credibility is much higher. As long as a person is not a beast that has lost his humanity, he will not turn a blind eye to the safety of his family. There is a saying that goes well, family is the weakest point, but also the strongest armor. They don't believe that bad people will suddenly change their past, but they can believe that a person can even choose to go against the whole world in order to protect his family. Prowler, who gained everyone's initial trust, lived up to expectations. He told Spider-Man all the relevant information he knew about Kingpin, the particle collider, and the base where the collider was located. Kingpin himself doesn't really need to say much. What the Prowler could learn was actually not much different from what Bid knew. Even less than Bid. Because the Prowler is strictly just a thug and has not entered the center of power of Kingpin's underground group. Therefore, his understanding of Kingpin mainly comes from his daily activities. Kingpin was a very cunning and vigilant person, and would not spread force around the world unless necessary. Although he is big and has top-notch fighting skills, he is actually a truly intelligent person. As for the collider, because the collider is very long and large, if you dig such a large project yourself, it will not only cost a lot of money, but also involve a lot of relationships, which is time-consuming, labor-intensive and expensive. It just so happened that during Brooklyn's early urban planning, the subway was rerouted, and several subway tracks and a subway station were abandoned below. So the Kingpin used his power to take it and build it beneath Brooklyn. The accelerator part of the particle collider relies on several completely abandoned subway tunnels as carrier spaces. And its main body, which is the impact location of the particles, was placed in the abandoned subway station together with the cooling device. When Prowler said this, Little Black Spider also interjected. He said that he once entered there by mistake, and then saw Spider-Man and the Green Goblin fighting fiercely, and also witnessed Spider-Man's death there. The Prowler was silent on this. Strictly speaking, Spider-Man's death also had his share of credit. Wait, Green Goblin. Is the Green Goblin you're talking about Norman Osborn? Asked middle-aged Peter. Prowler nodded. It's him. Norman is also working for Kingpin. Middle-aged Peter asked doubtfully. After thinking for a while, Prowler said, they should be in a cooperative relationship. As far as I know, the Osborn group also had a hand in Kingpin's particle collider. The problem now is that if the Green Goblin gets involved, The opponent's strength will increase a lot, middle-aged Peter said with a headache. This is not exactly good news. I think I need to leave for a while, Prowler said in his farewell message. Shadow Spider-Man warned. No offense, but I want to know what are you going to do? Prowler looked at him calmly. His eyes were very calm, and there was no hint of lying. Kingpin must have known about my betrayal by now. I want to go find my brother to ensure his safety. When the little black spider heard this, he jumped up quickly. Uncle Aaron, take me with you too, I want to save Dad too. The Prowler looked at him and patted his head gently. No, Miles, you will be safer if you stay here. But, little black spider was a little reluctant. Hearing that a bad guy like Kingpin might be harmful to his parents, how could he be willing to just stay here? Miles, listen. Prowler's tone became a little stern. Then, looking at the eyes of the little black spider, his heart softened unconsciously. Listen, Miles, your father is a policeman. Although Kingpin is powerful, he does not dare to attack the police easily. Quote. Bid stood up, looked at the uncle and nephew, and said, maybe this is not necessary. What do you mean? Prowler asked. Bide said, in our East, there is an idiom called, surround Wei and save Zhao. The abandoned underground tunnel is dark and deep. Looking around, there was deathly silence everywhere. Only the occasional foraging mouse crawling through the pipes can add a touch of life to the place. Several figures suddenly appeared here. They hang upside down and cling to the ceiling and walls of the underground tunnel, walking on the ground in a way that extremely defies gravity. These people were none other than Bid, Little Black Spider, Gwen and Penny. They were the second operational team for this assault. As for the few who are not here, Shadow Spider-Man, Spider Pigman, Middle-Aged Peter, and the newly joined Prowler, they are the first action group. The plan is this. The first action group, which had a relatively strong overall combat capability, broke into the vicinity of the particle collider directly from the front in a relatively conspicuous manner. In this way, most of the attention of Kingpin and others can be directly attracted. Not only can the parents of the little black spider be safe, but it can also create opportunities for the second action group to sneak in. As for the second action group, because there are two novices, Bid and Little Black Spider, their combat effectiveness is relatively weak. Even with Bid's spoilers, the Little Black Spider knew the general development direction of his abilities, but the time was too short, and just knowing it was useless. However, after all, Little Black Spider had the experience of infiltrating, so it was up to him to lead the way. The task of their group is to rush directly into the vicinity of the particle collider, and then find an opportunity to insert gadgets into the host of the particle collider and destroy it. The mission is simple, and if you're lucky, you don't even need to fight. This is why middle-aged Peter and the others are reassured that the little black spider will follow. Otherwise, they would definitely not let the little black spider come. Because they can leave this world through the collider, it doesn't matter whether Kingpin knows about them or not. But Little Black Spider is a member of this world and cannot leave together. Once the Little Black Spider follows, it means that he will completely break up with Kingpin. Of course, there may be another plan, kill Kingpin directly. However, this plan did not gain the approval of everyone. Because Spider-Man in most worlds don't kill people. The only ones who agreed to this plan were Shadow Spider-Man and Bid. Oh, and the Prowler. Even the person involved, Little Black Spider, was struggling with whether to really kill Kingpin if he defeated him. This kind of logic is really difficult for Bide to understand. But no matter what, since this is the world of Little Black Spider, he is the one who makes the decision. Other people's opinions can only be used as a reference. Bide, I have to say, the suit you designed for me is really beautiful. Thank you. The Little Black Spider crawled quickly in front, while turning his head to thank Bide who was beside him. The Little Black Spider now is the real Little Black Spider, at least it is the same in appearance. He was no longer wearing the cheap spider suit he bought in a roadside store to commemorate Spider-Man, but was now wearing a real suit made of high-tech nanofiber material. The main body of the suit is black, with only the shoulders and hands being red, which looks quite cool. In the words of Little Black Spider, this is his dream love dress. Hearing his words, Bide smiled secretly in his heart. Nonsense, this is your original suit style, of course you will like it. You're welcome, Miles, Bid smiled. By the way, have you figured out how to deal with Kingpin? If we want to gather our strength to kill him, this is the best time. Gwen on the side glared at Bid. How can you instigate him to kill? Bid shrugged. I'm telling the truth. If Kingpin is not killed, Miles and his family will live in Kingpin's shadow for the rest of their lives. After all, from the time Aaron chose to betray Kingpin, it's already on Kingpin's must-kill list. Hearing this, Gwen also fell silent. Because her father is a policeman, the education she received from an early age told her not to do illegal things, especially murder. But what Bid said does make sense. If Kingpin cannot be killed, his family will not be able to live in peace for the rest of their lives. There are only two options now. Or, if Little Black Spider's uncle dies, that person's death will be extinguished, and Kingpin will naturally not continue to pursue his family members. Or, the Kingpin dies and the root of the problem is solved, once and for all. However, Little Black Spider's thoughts are actually similar to Gwen's. His father is also a policeman, and he has been taught to abide by the law since he was a child. The Little Black Spider hesitated for a moment and said, perhaps, we can defeat him and let him see how powerful we are. Will he give up dealing with us? Bide laughed dumbly. Isn't this too naive? I can't stand this little Lolita like Penny anymore. She mocked. Kingpin is the biggest gang leader. Do you think he is intimidating? Little Black Spider was speechless for a moment, then after we defeat him, let him write a guarantee to promise not to hurt my family again. Gwen said speechlessly, do you think you are playing house? What should we do? Little Black Spider was a little troubled. He doesn't want to kill anyone. But when he thought of what Bide said, he had to try hard to think about the key point. If his parents died because of him, let alone never forgive himself for the rest of his life, he would probably commit suicide directly. Okay, be quiet, Gwen raised her hand to stop everyone from moving forward. Bide and others looked stern when they heard this. We've arrived. Through the gaps between the abandoned iron frames piled up at the entrance of the tunnel, you can see a glimmer of light coming from the front. That's where the particle collider is. However, the four of them did not act rashly, but were quietly waiting for the opportunity. They need to wait for the four members of the first action team to achieve certain results before taking action. Look at the other side. On the high-hanging tower, four figures are hanging or standing here. They are the four members of the first action group. Middle-aged Peter looked at the brightly lit building in front of him and the vehicles passing by underneath the building, and asked in surprise, how can it be so lively here? Shadow Spider-Man said, obviously not welcoming us. Prowler's voice was very calm, with the feeling of the sea before a storm. Kingpin held a charity dinner here to commemorate Spider-Man. ×3. This is really interesting, middle-aged Peter said with a sarcastic smile on his lips. The Spider-Man in this world was killed by Kingpin, and he actually held a memorial service for him. Shadow Spider-Man smiled and said, how much do you think he can earn? Spider-Pigman said angrily, is this the face of a capitalist? See if I don't beat him into a pig's head. Are you a pig yourself? The splendid hotel lobby was now filled with guests. There was delicious food on the table, the male guests were all in neat suits, and the female guests were also dressed up. A big man stood on the rostrum, holding a microphone in his hand and making a speech. Thank you. It's an honor to commemorate Spider-Man with everyone tonight. We were very good friends, just like. What? Look what he's saying about messing with fuck, what a pig. Shadow Spider-Man said. Spider-Pigman also subconsciously nodded in agreement before reacting. Hey, I can hear you. Shadow Spider-Man chuckled and pointed downward. Look at those waiters. The four of them looked over. Below, waiters wearing Spider-Man hoods were seen shuttling between the tables. The Prowler pointed to a corner of the hall. There is a private elevator of Jin Bin there, which can go directly to the underground. The main control room for controlling the particle collider is there. But how do we get in? Spider-Pigman asked as he looked at the people walking back and forth in the hall. The tombstones they had fought against before were also among them. Once he sees them, they will be discovered soon. Middle-aged Peter's eyes wandered through the scene for a moment, and he was shocked. He saw a figure he longed for, Mary Jane. Perhaps, we can go in directly. He was somewhat moved. Shadow Spider-Man stabbed him mercilessly and said, you want to get close to Mary Jane by the way, right? Wake up, buddy, she is not your MJ. No, Middle-aged Peter was speechless, but Shadow Spider-Man said exactly what he thought. But Shadow Spider-Man changed the subject. You're right, let's go in directly. Huh. The other three people looked at him, wondering what he meant. Shadow Spider-Man said, don't forget what our group does. We just want Kingpin to know that we are here. Middle-aged Peter suddenly realized. I see, then let's go quickly. With that said, he eagerly prepared to go in. However, at this time, the Shadow Spider-Man grabbed him by the collar. Listen, that's not your MJ, don't get into trouble. Think about Bede, Miles, Gwen and Penny. Think about our action plan. Middle-aged Peter's expression changed several times, and finally he let out a heavy breath. I know, I won't. Afterwards, the four people quickly found the hotel changing room, sneaked into it, and completed the change. In fact, there was nothing to change, but Shadow Spider-Man and middle-aged Peter each took a bow tie, and then touched a small cart with food. The Prowler took a waiter's coat and put it on his equipment, and then put a Spider-Man mask on his head. As for Spider-Pigman, because his appearance is too strange, he can only temporarily hide under the dining car. The three of them pushed the dining cart out of the kitchen and turned into the hall. At this time, Kingpin had finished his speech, left the living room, and took his private elevator to the Collider main control room underground. Even the headstones are gone. Seeing this, the three of them were obviously relieved. They should have known we were coming, but they left on purpose. It seems they didn't want to do anything in front of everyone. Shadow Spider-Man said. Of course, Kingpin and several of his men are all successful people who look like dogs on the surface. How can they let the world know their dark side? Middle-aged Peter said, but his eyes were always unconscious. Float to the side. MJ is sitting over there. Tonight, she was wearing a black off-shoulder dress, with burgundy shoulder-length hair, a sad face, and slightly red and swollen eyes, which was endearing. Even though Shadow Spider-Man repeatedly emphasized that this was not his MJ, when middle-aged Peter saw that almost identical face, he still couldn't help but fall in love with it. Don't forget about business, Shadow Spider-Man quietly kicked him. Middle-aged Peter took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and tried to eliminate distracting thoughts. Everyone passed through the living room smoothly and arrived at the elevator entrance of the private elevator. There were two bodyguards in suits with bulging waists at the door, and they were easily dispatched by four people. The elevator has already gone down, but it can't trouble them. This time it was much simpler and more crude. Shadow Spider-Man stepped forward, pulled left and right, and opened the elevator door. The four people jumped directly from the elevator shaft. At the same time, in the main control room, Kingpin also received reports from his subordinates. A sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. The little spiders are coming, and Aaron, this traitor, I will crush his bones one by one. Jin said to his assistant standing aside, the audience is already in place, start the process. Yes. Upload the genetic sequences of Vanessa Fisk and Richard Fisk. Start searching for spatial matching. In the computer room of the main control room, Ms. Octopus also received a notification from Jin Bin. She multitasked and quickly adjusted the data preparation before the collider caught fire. Initialize primary ignition sequence. The particle accelerator began to run rapidly. Two particle streams containing huge energy flew out from the very far coil. Constrained by the surrounding strong magnets, they moved forward and finally reached the collider. Secondary ignition countdown begins. 5, 4, 3. As the countdown ended, two bright streams of particles shot out from the two accelerators, one on the left and one on the right, and collided together. All of Brooklyn was shocked. On the streets, street lights, houses, high-rise buildings, and bridges were all distorted. The four Shadow Spider-Man have already arrived at the collider, but they can only watch the particle flow collision taking place. Let's go up and lure them out. Shadow Spider-Man made a quick decision. There is not much time left for them. The particle collider will attract things from parallel universes to this world, and even cause damage to all of Brooklyn. So, they have to get out of this world before things escalate further and get Miles and Prowler to shut down the collider. Whether they both decide to kill Kingpin or just defeat him in the end is none of their business. They are only responsible for helping defeat him. Swish swish. Heavily armed thugs in suits emerged from all directions, their guns pointed at the location of Shadow Spider-Man and others. The next moment, a metal storm swept over. Shadow Spider-Man jumped down from the air, and cooperated with Spider-Pigman to kill into the crowd from left to right. With their spider sense and super agility, they easily avoid all bullets and kill each other on their backs. The only difference is that most of those defeated by Spider-Pigman are still alive, while those defeated by Shadow Spider-Man are all killed in one hit. Middle-aged Peter and Prowler are also preparing to kill on the other side. However, at this moment, a cover suddenly fell down from above their heads, and two long tentacles stabbed at the two of them, one from the left and the other from the right. Hi, live. Middle-aged Peter waved, as if greeting an old friend, but he quickly moved aside. The Prowler didn't speak, but he moved very quickly and dodged the blow. Peter, Peter, Peter. Dear little Peter. Ms. Octopus laughed wildly as she emerged from the doorway. Two mechanical tentacles were firmly attached to the ceiling, while the other two were constantly launching attacks on middle-aged Peter and the Prowler. Attack, and you, Aaron, why did you betray us? You know the boss will never allow this to happen. The Prowler dodged to avoid the attacks of the tentacles again and again, and tried to attack Ms. Octopus's body, but was blocked by the tentacles and could not get closer. Ms. Octopus's octopus tentacles are similar to mechanical intelligent beings, so some conventional attacks cannot deal with her. I don't want to be inexplicably blown up to the sky one day while sleeping, or suddenly traveled to another universe. Prowler said coldly. Ha! Ms. Octopus sneered, I guess the new little spider has something to do with you, right? The Prowler's movements stalled and he was almost hit by the tentacle. Ms. Octopus smiled and said, it seems that my guess is correct. The height of that little spider is about 170 to 175 centimeters. I remember that you have a nephew named Miles, right? I went to the school where he attended in the afternoon. I retrieved some information and found that his height is 173 centimeters. I guess that's your nephew, right? Prowler was instantly furious. Miles is his weakness. And this is exactly what Ms. Octopus wants to see. In fact, this was also a temporary idea. The reason why she knew Miles' information was because after Prowler's betrayal, Kingpin was ready to make him pay the price, so he decided to arrest Prowler's brother and his family to threaten Prowler. For this reason, they will investigate the information of the Prowler's family. As for the connection between Spider-Man and Miles, it was a clue detected from Prowler's reaction just now. But the effect is outstanding. This is not a hot-blooded comic. The Prowler, who entered a state of rage, did not explode, but began to make frequent mistakes in details. This resulted in him being hit by tentacles several times from time to time. After too many times, even if he was wearing armor, he couldn't bear it anymore. If it weren't for the help of middle-aged Peter, I'm afraid he would have been beaten down. But as the saying goes, the house leaks only when it rains all night, and the boat is late and encounters a strong wind. When the middle-aged Peter, the Prowler, and the Octopus Lady were entangled endlessly, a figure came quickly from the iron frame behind them. Middle-aged Peter glanced out of the corner of his eye. It's a tombstone. He immediately sensed something was wrong. I am surrounded by a weakened teammate, and I am surrounded by two bosses. What should I do? Wait online. Urgent. The other side. Hearing the faint gunshots coming from the tunnel, Biden and others looked stern. It's started. Let's get going too. Gwen said. Let's go. Penny decided to take the lead due to the thickness of her mecha. She slammed into the thing blocking the abandoned tunnel in front and jumped out. Gwen and Little Black Spider also jumped out one after another. Without any obstruction, the sound of gunfire immediately became louder. Their location is about 100 meters away from the collider where Shadow Spider-Man and others are fighting. If the collider is used as the central axis, it is probably that the place where Shadow Spider-Man and others fight is in the upper right corner of the collider, while the location where Bid and others appear is in the center of the left side of the collider. But on the same cross-section on both sides, there is an extremely dazzling flow of particles colliding in the middle as a cover. According to Little Black Spider, the insertion port is probably on the upper left side. So this position should be just right. Okay, now, Miles, you take the gadget to find the location of the insertion port, and then use your invisibility ability to hide there. After we solve everything, you can put the gadget as soon as possible. Insert it and destroy the collider. Bid repeated the next action plan. Understood. Little Black Spider touched the gadget hanging on his chest and said solemnly, I promise, it will definitely succeed. I believe you. Bid reached out and shook his hand. Come on. Gwen and Penny also sent their own encouragement. The little black spider was a little nervous at first, but now it calmed down. He gave a thumbs up to the three of them, then swayed and disappeared in front of them. Bid smiled knowingly, and it seemed that the assault training given to the little black spider before departure still had some effect. Although his combat skills and the like are still about zero, he can at least actively enter into invisibility. Withdrawing his gaze, Bid looked at Gwen and Penny. Before he could speak, the spider sense automatically responded. The three of them jumped to the edge together. Boom. There was a loud bang. A burly figure descended from the sky. It was a big monster that was 13 or 14 meters tall, with green muscles all over its body, and a pair of huge wings growing from its back. Obviously, it was not only strong, but could also fly. One of Spider-Man's classic villains. Green Goblin. In fact, a few days ago, when the Green Goblin was fighting Spider-Man in this universe, in order to kill Spider-Man, it pushed Spider-Man into the collider. And its behavior eventually triggered a big explosion, seriously injuring Spider-Man, leading to Spider-Man's death. But at the same time, he himself was seriously injured by the big explosion and almost died. However, it is alive and still has one breath left. Afterwards, Kingpin injected him with nutrient solution and sent him back to the Osborn group. I don't know what it did, but within a few days, it appeared here again in full swing. And it looks like he is stronger and bigger than before. Bid's eyes widened. What the hell? Is this the Green Goblin? I thought the Green Goblin was a man who was injected with medicine and wore armor to fight. The Green Goblin in his impression was the one in the live-action movie version. Who would have thought that such a terrifying monster would appear in front of him? Indeed, it looks so scary. The big bubblegum bubbles that Penny had just blown popped out of shock. Gwen rushed forward directly. Don't hesitate, kill him. Okay. Penny responded quickly. Gwen rushed to the left, and she went to the right. Bid watched the two little girls step forward, one on the left and the other on the right. After hesitating for a moment, he found a fulcrum above and flew towards the Green Goblin's head with the spider's thread. Roar. The Green Goblin here is obviously no longer human at all. It let out a roar that was even more beastly than a wild beast, and rushed towards the three of Bide. The three people and one monster immediately fell into a fierce battle. After the little black spider became invisible, it crawled upwards and soon reached the insertion opening. However, his figure suddenly stopped. I saw a burly figure hanging quietly upside down where the insertion was. Four mechanical legs and a long scorpion tail needle behind him. It is the Scorpion King. Boy, you're here. The Scorpion King sneered and looked at the invisible little black spider. The little black spider was startled. His uncle told him that his invisibility could sometimes evade infrared detectors. Although the body will spontaneously emit heat after exercise and be detected by the detector, as long as he slows down, this heat leakage can be reduced to a very small level. Theoretically, he shouldn't be discovered. However, at this time, he couldn't allow him to think too much. The Scorpion King's tail needle stabbed towards him fiercely. The little black spider was so frightened that it backed away. He was not confident that he could defeat the Scorpion King, so he planned to leave the Scorpion King's sight first and look for opportunities from the other side. However, how could the Scorpion King let him go so easily? This kid is on the boss's must-kill list. The Scorpion King used all four legs to launch himself towards the little black spider. Seeing that the situation was not good, the little black spider was so frightened that its climbing ability temporarily failed, and it immediately fell down due to gravity. Fortunately, he remembered how to use the spider silk launcher in midair, and quickly found a fulcrum to shoot out the spider silk and fly over. The Scorpion King also saw this guy's immaturity and chased after him with a grin. The two of them chased each other, jumping around in the buildings. Although the little black spider never fights head-on, fortunately, the spider gene gives him super physical fitness and spider sense, so although he cannot face the Scorpion King's attack head-on, he will not be easily caught. The Scorpion King was very angry about this, but there was nothing he could do. Although scorpions are the natural enemies of spiders, if spiders keep running around in the sky, scorpions are destined to be helpless against spiders. What the scorpion didn't know was that the young spider it was chasing had great potential. Under the influence of high pressure, this potential is constantly being released outwards. Boom! Bid was accidentally knocked out of the air by the Green Goblin's claws, and then hit the metal wall heavily on the side. Ahem! Bid clasped the wall with one hand and stuck himself on it, and rubbed his chest vigorously with the other hand. This Green Goblin is simply a bug-type monster. It's strong, fast, has high defense, and most importantly, it can fly. I don't know how many times more powerful than other versions of the Green Goblin, a modified man wearing humanoid armor. In the distance, Gwen and Penny are still entangled with the Green Goblin. But the spider silk they shot had no significant impact on the Green Goblin. They wrapped a few strands of spider silk around the Green Goblin's wings in an attempt to eliminate its ability to fly. But it just grabbed it with its backhand, pulled off all the spider silk, and flew up again. These spider silks, which are about 135 times tougher than human bones and 25 times tougher than high-strength alloy steel, can only delay it for a few seconds. What's this guy's weakness? While Bid was observing the Green Goblin's actions, his mind was running rapidly. Just as Bid was paddling and thinking, Gwen let out a scream and was caught by the Green Goblin's huge palm. The Green Goblin's hands were so huge that they just happened to hold Gwen's body. He exerted so much force that he actually wanted to crush her. Penny was so anxious that she drove the spider mecha onto the Green Goblin's shoulder and punched it in the face with a combination of punches. But the Green Goblin is extremely intelligent. After all, he is a crazy personality derived from the mad scientist Norman Osborn. It just used its other hand to block some important attacks from Penny, while more power was placed on Gwen's side. The intention is clear. Just get rid of one first. Seeing this, Bide couldn't continue to observe. He stretched out his hands at the same time, and two spider threads shot on the Green Goblin's shoulders, one on the left and one on the right. Norman, look here. Bid roared, using the spider silk and the explosive power of his legs to accelerate to the extreme in an instant and shoot towards the Green Goblin's head. Roar. The Green Goblin roared back. It felt threatened by Bid's spider silk flick, and flapped its wings rapidly to disrupt Bid's attack line. This move was indeed very successful. The fulcrum of Bid's spider silk was on it. When it moved, the fulcrum naturally moved with it, and the overall center of strength also became chaotic. But this is exactly what Bid wants to see. Attack them and save them. Make a sound in the east and attack in the west. His real target is Gwen, who is pinched by the Green Goblin. Bide kicked in the air, targeting the Green Goblin's wrist. With the blessing of several powers, the power of this kick was so huge that it knocked the Green Goblin's hand holding Gwen sideways. When a normal person's wrist is pinched hard, the palm of the hand will temporarily lose strength. Bid's hands were not that big and he couldn't hold the Green Goblin's wrist, but the effect of this kick was almost the same. The Green Goblin's hand subconsciously relaxed a little. Gwen's petite body slipped from the gap in the Green Goblin's palm. Bid quickly let go of the previous spider thread, jumped off the Green Goblin's hand, held Gwen in his arms in midair, and then swung to a platform on the other side again and put Gwen down. Gwen had been pinched by the Green Goblin before and was out of breath, and her consciousness was almost blurred. Bide quickly pinched her, but found that it was of no use. Looking at Gwen's almost non-rising chest, Bid gritted his teeth, pulled up her mask, took a deep breath, and breathed it through her cherry lips. After a lot of busy work, Gwen's consciousness became clearer. Looking at Bid's face who was so close to her, Gwen blushed slightly. She wasn't angry. Although her consciousness was a little blurry just now, she still had a basic perception of the outside world. She knew that Bid was saving her. When his eyes met Gwen's clear eyes, Bide also blushed. Ahem, are you okay? Gwen nodded. Although the bones all over her body are still sore, the spider gene has given her strong recovery power, and she is much better now. And the body is still recovering quickly. Bid nodded and stood up. I must help Penny as soon as possible. You can have a good rest here. With that said, he turned around and rushed towards the Green Goblin as if he was running away. This sentence is actually correct. Without the control and harassment of Gwen and Petter, Penny can now only deal with the Green Goblin alone. In just a few dozen seconds, she was already in danger. Fortunately, Bid returned to the battlefield in time, so that she would not be defeated immediately. But without Gwen, a skilled warrior, Bid and Penny's situation is still precarious. Hey guys, looks like you could use a little help. At this time, a calm and arrogant voice sounded. Bid was overjoyed. Appearing here is the Shadow Spider-Man. After saying his opening remarks, he quickly joined the battlefield. With the addition of this powerful combat force, Penny and Bid's pressure was greatly reduced. And Shadow Spider-Man deserves to be called Peter Spider, with full points of verbal skills. Under his narration, Bide and others also understood what happened on the other side. Although Shadow Spider-Man and Spider-Pigman have to deal with dozens of armed gangsters, there is no real boss character that can fight them. Due to the high combat power of the two men, they were all subdued or killed in no time. Afterwards, the two discussed and divided their forces. Spider-Pigman went to help middle-aged Peter who was in danger, and Shadow Spider-Man came to help Peter and the others. Where's Gwen? Shadow Spider-Man asked doubtfully as he nimbly shuttled between the Green Goblin's waving palms. Bid replied, she was injured and is resting. Shadow Spider-Man nodded and did not reply. Roar. The Green Goblin was very angry at the sudden appearance of an additional opponent. The most important thing is that this opponent is too similar to the Peter it hated most before. Almost the same sound. Pretty much nonsense. The verbal harassment that was even more frequent than his fist attacks made the Green Goblin dizzy. There were even obvious mistakes in a few attacks. In order for Ms. Octopus to make the Prowler furious, she still needs to go through careful observation, analysis and testing before finally picking out his weakness. However, Peter Parker only needed a few simple words to make the Green Goblin furious. This is Spider-Man's trick, so terrifying. Bid looked on in admiration. I didn't think Spider-Man's chatterbox was useful before watching the movie, but now it seems that it is really useful. Roar. The Green Goblin roared angrily and flapped his wings suddenly, creating a huge gust of wind and flying towards Shadow Spider-Man. Shadow Spider-Man dodged the angry blow. Compared with Bid, his movements were indeed much crisper and neater. Of course, what's even more powerful is his combat experience. Compared with Bid and Black Spider who have just started, and Gwen and Penny who have already started but are not considered senior, the setting is that they have not been Spider-Man for too long. The combat experience of Shadow Spider-Man is simply not that great. Rich. The Green Goblin, who could barely be dealt with by the three of them working together, was tricked by the Shadow Spider-Man. Sudden. Shadow Spider-Man swung upwards. The Green Goblin, who was completely attracted by him, immediately followed him. At this moment, Shadow Spider-Man suddenly turned around, moved his hands together, and shot several strands of spider silk into the Green Goblin's eyes, ears, and various parts of his body one after another. At the same time, he kicked off the wall behind him, quickly changed direction, and landed on the Green Goblin's head. At this time, the Green Goblin was still tearing the webbing off his face due to the loss of his 5 senses. Shadow Spider-Man took out a revolver from nowhere and stuffed it directly into the Green Goblin's ear. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Fire exploded on the Green Goblin's head. The Green Goblin's figure paused in the air, and then fell downwards like an eagle with broken wings. Shadow Spider-Man pulled the spider silk with one hand, and turned back to Bid and Penny with the other hand to make a success gesture. Bid and Penny gave a thumbs up in return. The sudden burst of the wave just now was simply wonderful. The Green Goblin went from vigorous to burping, just in the blink of an eye. After seeing the combat power of Shadow Spider-Man, Bid deeply realized the gap between himself and him. No wonder Shadow Spider-Man was angry at his previous smugness. Snap! Shadow Spider-Man landed in front of Bide and Penny. How is it? I was so handsome just now. Handsome, indeed handsome. Bide gave a thumbs up again. Penny also did not hesitate to praise. Uncle, you are so awesome. Shadow Spider-Man had a black line. Uncle. A puzzled expression appeared on the spider mecha, revealing Penny's demeanor at the moment. Hey, I'm only 14 years old. Aren't you an uncle? Shadow Spider-Man. This is why I don't like children. Shadow Spider-Man turned to Bid. Bid laughed. Okay. After teasing, Shadow Spider-Man said sternly, where is Gwen? We need to get together, go help them, and then kill Kingpin together. The safe operation time of the particle collider should be only there's about 1 minute and 50 seconds left. When Bide heard this, he immediately looked towards Gwen. Buzz. At this time, the spider sense suddenly started to move. Ah! A scream came from below. No, it's Gwen. Bid's expression changed and he jumped down immediately. Shadow Spider-Man and Penny saw this and followed without hesitation. After passing through the steel bars that were supposed to be in the sky, the scene below appeared in front of the three beaters. They saw that the Green Goblin, who they had already killed, was approaching Gwen step by step. But Gwen was seriously injured by the Green Goblin before, and even though the Spider Gene's physical recovery ability was excellent, she couldn't recover so quickly. She could only stand up reluctantly, move her steps and retreat back. But the speed is really not fast. The Green Goblin's hand was almost touching her. How is it possible? He was shot through a fragile ear hole and he didn't die. Shadow Spider-Man was a little surprised. Although piercing the ears may not be as fatal as hitting the temples, he considered that the Green Goblin's skin was too tough and was afraid of affecting the efficiency of the bullet, so he chose to pierce the ears instead of the temples. Moreover, the ears reach inward directly to the human body's forebrain, which is also a critical part. According to the kinetic energy of the revolver bullet, he was sure that as long as he could aim it, it would be able to penetrate it. But now, the Green Goblin is still alive and kicking. How can this be? Penny pointed to the Green Goblin's ears and shouted, "Look, his ears are bleeding." The Green Goblin's ears were indeed bleeding out, and the flow rate was quite fast, and there was even some white substance mixed in with it. This shows that its head is indeed injured, but it is not fatal. Monster. Shadow Spider-Man cursed and rushed down quickly. However, there are people faster than him. Bede. Seeing Gwen being chased by the Green Goblin, Bede seemed to have a ball of fire burning in his body, directly activating some kind of special system in his body. And the next moment, a magical scene happened. Bede's figure suddenly disappeared in front of the two Shadow Spider-Man, and then suddenly appeared above the Green Goblin's head. In an instant, it spanned dozens of meters. Bang! Even Bede himself didn't realize what happened, before his body collided hard with the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin's body is really too hard, almost like steel. Bede felt as if he had chosen the wrong height when diving, and was slapped face down on the cement floor from a height of more than 10 meters. It's also like when a wall suddenly appeared in front of me when I was sprinting 100 meters, and I ran into it without having time to brake. The entire contact surface and even the body were in burning pain. The nose is not a nose, and the eyes are not eyes. Feeling numb. However, the Green Goblin's state is also very strange. One moment it was still full of life, chasing Gwen. But after being hit by Bede, he fell down from the platform like a camel crushed by straw. Bede also fell down with the Green Goblin in a daze. Gwen took a step forward and reached out to grab him. However, it ended up being a bit slower due to physical injuries. When her hand grabbed Bede's figure had already fallen. What's even more frustrating is that, whether intentionally or not, one of the Green Goblin's big hands actually grabbed one of Bede's legs. This pull accelerated his fall even more. Gwen was also brought down by this sudden force. Boom! There was a loud noise from nowhere. Bede suddenly woke up from his confusion and quickly discovered his situation at this time. His posture at this time looked a little funny. One foot is held by the Green Goblin, pointing downwards. One hand was held by Gwen, pointing upward. And when you look further down, you see the dazzling stream of particles that are constantly colliding. They are about to fall in. Although this was their original plan, it was not at this time. They also want to help Little Black Spider defeat Jin Bin. Bede's feet shook vigorously a few times, trying to break free from the Green Goblin's hand. But at this time, the Green Goblin seemed to have lost all of his life, except that his hand still retained the posture of holding Bede's foot when he was alive. It was really fooled. Gwen, it seems we can only say goodbye here. Seeing that his efforts to free himself were fruitless, Bede looked at the girl above. Gwen reached out and pulled off the white spider mask on her face. With the help of the hand between the two of them, she came closer to Bede and said in words that only the two of them could hear, "You kissed me, and I will pay for it. Always remember it." Bede said awkwardly, "I'm obviously trying to save you." Humph. We all have strong bodies and don't need artificial respiration at all. I can recover after just taking a short rest. Gwen snorted. Don't I know that? You also know that I am a beginner who has just started. Bide said nonchalantly. Gwen smiled slyly. It's useless to say so much, just smile. She took out a mobile phone from somewhere. Obviously Spider-Man's personal suit has no pockets. Bid smiled subconsciously. So, a photo of the two of them appeared with Gwen on top, followed by Petter, and finally a giant green goblin. That's not fair, I didn't take the shot. Bide shouted. Boom. Dazzling particle streams rushed towards them from both sections, and he closed his eyes subconsciously. After a very short period of time, Bide felt his hands and feet loosen up. Apparently, Gwen and the Green Goblin are missing. In my ears, a soft whisper from the girl was left. Anyway, I will remember you, you took away my first kiss. Bid retracted the hand that Gwen had just held, and there seemed to be residual heat from the girl on it. For a moment, he felt a little disappointed. Etc. Gwen disappeared, probably going back. What about him? Is he traveling through time and space and returning to his own world? It doesn't seem like it. Bid opened his eyes, a little confused. What catches the eye is still the dazzling particle flow. Colorful lights were shining and dancing around him. The particle flow formed by the convergence of microscopic particles is constantly colliding and annihilating. But that was not what shocked Bide. Rather, in front of his eyes, a picture appeared. There is the muscular Toby Spider who wears a red spider suit and a blue spider suit, the tall Andrew Spider who wears an extraordinary spider suit, and the short, young and energetic Holland who wears a coat as a suit. Brother Spider. And that turned out to be Spider-Man. Every picture seems to represent a world where Spider-Man exists. What exactly is going on? Beater was puzzled. At this time, Jin Bin's collider was in the main control room. Oops, boss, just now, the energy demand of the collider suddenly increased, 10 times as much as before. A technician said anxiously. What? How could this happen? Kingpin became furious when he heard this. Find out the reason quickly. Yes. Have my family been found? Kingpin asked again. Not yet, said another technician responsible for matching genes. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt Kingpin's killing intent, and quickly explained. Originally, it was expected that it would take about half a minute to successfully match, but with the current energy loss, the collider may only be able to maintain 2 seconds. There's less than 10 seconds left, so. Asshole, what are you waiting for? Activate the backup energy immediately. Kingpin smashed the table in front of him with a punch and said angrily. He is willing to destroy the entire Brooklyn to study this particle collider. Isn't it just to find the wife and son he lost in this world from the parallel universe? If he fails, what's the point of everything he does? Yes. The technician shuddered and quickly began to operate, connecting the prepared energy group to the accelerator. In fact, there are great risks in doing so. Because the cooling device of the collider has a large loss, the losses of each group of energy and cooling devices are almost equal. And if you add a group rashly now, it will extend the use time of the cooling device. Once this time exceeds its service life, the technicians did not dare to think further. But he didn't dare to express his opinion. Just kidding, when Kingpin is furious, he can really beat people to pulp with one punch. Collider particle flow. Bid's feeling at this time was very subtle. He raised his hand. His body had just undergone the same quantum decay reaction as before. But this time it was very short. Almost in an instant, he was back to his original state. Subsequently, hungry. This feeling emerged immediately. He felt as if his body had become a gluttonous mouth, frantically devouring some special energy in these particle flows. And his body is gradually strengthening with this devouring. Strength, agility, speed, physique, and even spirit. Strengthen all aspects. Bide feels that his current condition is better than ever. Even the injuries he suffered from the previous battle with the Green Goblin have recovered as before. What exactly is going on? Bide clenched his fist and felt the huge power contained in it. If his level of awakening was still extremely low before, now it is at least medium. Even higher. He doesn't know how strong he is now. But it's definitely several times higher than before. And Bid's eyes passed through the violent and dazzling particle flow, fixating on the different worlds. He had a feeling as if he could travel through the past with just a thought. The price is some small energy in the body. After hesitating for a moment, Bide did not do so. He stretched out his hand and recorded these variables representing each world in his genetic code. With these variables, he can then activate the mysterious power in the genetic code to quantize himself and travel through the past. Is this the ability of the super gene hidden in my body? Bide murmured to himself. At the same time, he couldn't help but think of what Gwen said before. Have you been to other worlds? Are you a Spider-Man with the ability to travel through other worlds? Time and space Spider-Man. Unexpectedly, Gwen's words came true. Judging from the power in his genes that he currently feels, he does have the ability to travel to other worlds. He also had a glimmer of realization. His time travel was definitely an accident. Because among the many variables representing different worlds seen in this particle flow, there is no world that belongs to him. Obviously, he came here because of his genes. Then, from now on, I will be Spider-Man of time and space. Bid clenched his fists. The surrounding particle streams are still swarming and colliding, some are annihilated, and some have entered an entangled state with the quanta of other parallel worlds. With a thought in his mind, Bide got out of it. It's not that he doesn't want to continue absorbing. He could sense the message coming from his body, he wasn't full yet. But considering that several other Spider-Man except Gwen also need to rely on this particle collider to return to their respective worlds, Bid feels that he cannot absorb all the energy in it. Bide. You're okay. A voice sounded above his head. Then, Shadow Spider-Man and Penny fell from the sky. One of them stretched out a hand, grabbed Bid's left and right hands, and then worked together to bring him to a platform. Penny looked at Bid and asked, "Where's Gwen?" Bid replied, "Gwen has returned to her world from there, you guys should go down first." That's good, Shadow Spider-Man and Penny both breathed a sigh of relief. Although we have only been together for a few days, it seems like we have become a family. Aunt May is the oldest elder in this big family. The mature Shadow Spider-Man and middle-aged Peter are the backbone of this big family. And Spider-Pig, Gwen, Bede, Little Black Spider and Penny are naturally the rising stars. So they were all worried about the safety of Bid and Gwen just now. Shadow Spider-Man wondered, why did you fall in and not return to your own world? Penny was also confused. Can't they go back through this? But why did Gwen go back? Bid said, I activated my true power, and I promised Miles that I would help him deal with Kingpin. I will go back when the time comes. Okay, let's go, Shadow Spider-Man said with some relief. He saw Bid's responsibility and witnessed his growth. Bid shook his head, stretched out his hand, and stopped the two men's actions. It's time for you to go, said Bede. Shadow Spider-Man said, are you kidding me? I also promised Miles. Bide still shook his head. I can feel that there is not much energy left in the collider. It can only last for about a minute at most. You must go back as soon as possible. So you don't need to go back from here. Shadow Spider-Man looked at Bide with interest. Bid nodded. This is also my true power. But Shadow Spider-Man and Penny obviously didn't believe it. At this time, Bide stretched out his hand and pressed it towards Shadow Spider-Man. Shadow Spider-Man raised his hand and made a blocking gesture. You brat, I taught you all these moves. This is of no use to me. Before he finished speaking, Bide's figure in front of him shook and disappeared. Then, a figure appeared from behind Shadow Spider-Man. Because there was no malicious intent, the spider reaction was not activated. The palm of his hand was also placed on the back of Shadow Spider-Man. Shadow Spider-Man only reacted at this moment and turned around quickly. How did you do that? Bide said. My power is time and space. What I can do now is to quantize myself in an instant, and then reshape myself in another place to achieve an effect similar to teleportation. I call it quantum flash. Cool. Shadow Spider-Man gave a thumbs up. Then, he reached out and pulled Bid's hand that was holding him, held Bid in his arms, and hugged him hard. In this case, I leave this place to you, help Miles. I will, I promise. Bid also hugged Shadow Spider-Man tightly. Neither of them mentioned the previous awkwardness again. Then he pushed him. Shadow Spider-Man walked to the platform. Then I'll go first. Say goodbye to Miles and Aunt May for me. Goodbye. Bid waved his hand. Shadow Spider-Man took a step forward, fell down, and soon fell into the particle flow of the collider. Bide could see his body being rapidly quantized, then being attracted to a variable, and passing along the channel built by that variable. Apparently, Shadow Spider-Man has returned to his world. Snap. The cover of the spider mecha opened, and Penny jumped out and jumped directly into Bid's arms. A big bear hug too. Bide, I believe you will become a very reliable man. Penny encouraged. Bid smiled and said, thank you, let's go quickly. Goodbye. Penny used the spider mecha to hug Bid gently again, which was a farewell to Bid and her little mecha friend. Later, she also fell into the particle flow and returned to 3145. Then, Spider-Pig and Peter are left. Bid retracted his gaze, stretched out his hand and flicked out a spider thread, bypassing the nearby dense metal platforms and steel buildings, and headed towards the direction of middle-aged Peter and others. In fact, the battle here is almost over. Although the Prowler was stimulated into a state of rage by Ms. Octopus's words in a short period of time, their offense and defense deformed, causing them to fall into decline for a time. But he's not really stupid. After a while, the Prowler regained his composure. Later, the middle-aged Peter dealt with Ms. Octopus, and the Prowler dealt with Tombstone. The battle between the two sides fell into a stalemate for a time. Until the arrival of Spider-Pigman. Thanks for watching.